I'm happy to be here because I went to UC Berkeley as an undergrad, and that was obviously very formative. I worked with a sociologist. I heard that there's a sociologist grad student, Professor Jerome Carabel, and was part of the URAP program, which sort of like led my path towards higher ed policy, and got my bachelor's in statistics and a minor in public policy because there was no bachelor's degree. So a huge love for the UC system, and actually presented last year at the center, I think about like 15 years ago. So it's good to be back, and hopefully won't be that long before we're back again. Yeah. So thank you for having us. So we'll kick it off. I'm just going to introduce California Competes, and then I'm going to tag David in to talk about this study, and we're happy to talk about this or any other the work we've been doing. I feel like in the intros and interests, there's a lot of other overlap in some of our work too. Great. So let's see. First, next slide. So about California Competes, we are a policy research and advocacy organization, and our work focuses at the intersection of higher education, equity, and the economy. And as you can see on this slide, California Competes views higher education as both a vaccine and an antidote against economic stagnation and social stratification for individual Californians, our communities, and the state's economy. We think a lot about both the public and private benefits of higher education. And because of that, if we can get higher ed to fulfill its full promise, we envision a California where our state and regional economies and communities thrive, fueled by equitable and racially just post-secondary and workforce outcomes. And I want to emphasize that we see, the public and private benefits around higher education, but also, higher education for economic mobility, but also for communities, for social mobility, for the sort of strength of our state across many spheres. And I think one thing that we are enthusiastic that we're seeing increasingly is the view of higher education, not just for the individuals and the economy, but also in fueling some our state's main priorities, like around homelessness, around climate change, et cetera. So we are happy that higher ed is being recognized, not just as sort of a siloed specific policy context or area, but also for its importance across the spectrum and across our state's foundation. Next slide. So what do we specifically focus on? Our policy priorities, the ones that we've identified as being critical for us to get through this pandemic and not just, be existing at the end of this, but to have stronger structures and systems at the end of the pandemic. We've identified 5 main policy priorities. From the top is improving higher education's alignment with workforce needs, and that's both in engaging employers, and we have a regional and a regional focus around that. Also thinking about higher education's ability to align programs to state, regional, and local economic and community needs, and then promoting strategies that deepen student learning and career readiness and job readiness, like work-based learning, and providing students and faculty and staff with actionable labor market information so we can be, as nimble as possible. Next, we also focus on post-secondary access and success for adults. Obviously, you can see these are cross-cutting issues. The focus on workforce is obviously something that matters a lot to adult learners, which we'll talk about today. But we think it matters across the board. And the things that will support adult learners, we also believe will support all students. So we specifically focusing on awarding credit for prior learning more consistently. Higher ed does this really well in the form of AP and IB, but does it less well around work experience, which is something that's obviously critical in improving access and success for adults. Expanding the use of competency-based education, where we focus on what students are learning versus how much time they spend in class. Reforming financial aid to encourage enrollment and completion by adults. So we've focused on accounting for the total cost of attendance. So we know that, housing, the cost of living is oftentimes more expensive than tuition and fees. So we need to consider that in financial aid. and then also removing age-based eligibility requirements, time out of high school requirements, which we've removed for the community colleges and the last budget, but more work remains to be done. Also related to improving access and success for adults is promoting flexible course scheduling and improving pathways into post-secondary education, including admissions and developmental education policies. We're also focused on effective and accessible online education. So, online education was growing before the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic has made it, almost universal at times. And one thing that's clear is online ed is here to stay. It's going to grow. One thing that we are pushing our state to really think deeply about is because the outcomes for online have oftentimes been even less equitable than in person, we have to make sure with the growth of online education that we're not exacerbating equity gaps. So how do we do that? How do we deliver quality online at scale? What should be online? What shouldn't? Who can we reach with this? And is there a way to alleviate long-run cost pressures? These are all open questions, but ones that need to be answered. And then fourth and fifth on this list, I think about them oftentimes together, is coordinated policy setting and comprehensive education and workforce data. The pandemic underscores the need for statewide policy setting to address challenges facing California students as they go between systems, sometimes structurally as the community college transferred to the four-year university, but sometimes in ways that we didn't imagine. Perhaps when a pandemic hits and students move away from campus, how are they able to access higher ed and higher ed student services resources, food pantries, et cetera? If we have greater intersegmental coordination, we're better able to serve students, and they're better able to complete their coursework, learn more, engage better. So we are really thinking about how can we improve higher ed coordination. California Competes believes that our state needs a higher ed coordinating entity, and we don't mean another CPAC or a revised version of CPAC. And I'm happy to talk more about this, and we're hopeful that we will see something this year that brings back something that allows our state to make more coordinated policy setting, particularly as we've had huge investments in higher ed and new programs. How do we ensure that they work together to support students? Related to that is the data piece. We are moving forward with the Cradle to Career data system, and I'm grateful to have been appointed to its governing board. I'm really excited that we're going to be able to have data that helps us understand California's trajectory through, early childhood, K-12, higher ed, and into the workforce. And this data system is really ambitious. We went from being one of the few states without one to, once this is launched, we're going to have the best data system in our nation. It's going to have not only analytical tools for researchers to access great data, but also great tools for practitioners to be able to understand how to better serve students. So that's California Competes and what we are focused on. And with that, though, I will turn it over to David, who's going to talk about one of our studies focused on adult learners.
Thank you, Sujin. Can you hear me? All right, great. So Get Ready is the title of the report, and I invite you to download it afterward from californiacompetes.org. If you forget, that's on every slide. Our website has all of our past publications on it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about where this came from. It's a little unusual. The data for this report are unusual, and it's a proprietary data set from an organization called College App. And what College App does, they took technology that was used for targeted marketing from political campaigns. You're trying to figure out who's going to vote for John McCain or Barack Obama or whoever, and they used it to look into marketing colleges and universities. And it starts with a survey, and they do these periodically. The one that we used for the report was of about almost 10,000 California adults, 25 and older, and it took place in August and September of 2020. And that's important to remember later on, because this is the first year of the pandemic, and it may affect, interest in who wants to go to college online as opposed to in person, which we'll get to near the end of the presentation. They take these survey results and they combine them with a consumer database and a voter file using machine learning techniques. And that's some fancy statistics that I won't get into. They weight that data to make the population. And what the ultimate result is that they create for every individual, every adult in California gets a score from 0% to 100% about whether you want to enroll in higher education in the next 2 years, and what type, where you would like to go, and which course and which format you're interested in, online or in person or combination. And these are the survey items. And for the purposes of this study, if you had at least a 60% score on wanting to enroll, and we consider you to be a yes, I do intend to enroll. And if you have at least a 50% probability of selecting one of these institution types or being interested in online courses only, then that's considered to be interested in that. Before I go on, any questions before I show you the first results? I'll pause. If you have questions, please raise your hand. I'm happy to answer them along the way. And if not, I'm also happy to answer them at the end. All right, here we go. The main finding is that almost 1 in 5 California adults, 25 and up, are interested and in fact intend to pursue higher education in the next 2 years, 19%. Yeah, so that's a lot. 5 million is a lot. It's higher among women than men. This is not a big surprise, although when a Wall Street Journal article came out last year about women enrolling in college, it seemed to catch a lot of other people by surprise. But most of you know that this is not a new trend that's been going on for many decades now. We also broke down the results by race and ethnicity. You see, far and away, Latinx Californians are much more likely to say they want to go to college in the next 2 years. 1 in 3, in fact, Latinx adults, much more than white, Black, and Asian Californians. There were other races and ethnicities in the survey. They weren't enough to report the results, so this is what we have. Also, not surprisingly, among adults, the younger groups have highest level of interest or intent to enroll. So almost more than 1 out of 3 25 to 34-year-olds say they intend to enroll in higher education in the next 2 years, and that drops off as the groups get older. We also broke this down by income. If you the median house, this is by household income, and the median household income in California is a little bit over $80,000. So you see that it's the groups on the top half of the graph, which is the bottom half of the income distribution, are far and away more likely to say they intend to pursue higher education. If you're making more than $75,000 household income, only 1 to 5% of these individuals say they're interested. But if you look at the ones right below the median, that's where there's a lot of interest, particularly that 35,000 to 49,999 group. 60% say they intend to pursue higher education in the next 2 years. So we also look at this by region. This is how we divide up the state into 12 regions. And each one of these is 1 or more contiguous counties. And you'll see there's it ranges quite a lot from 9% in the Central Sierra and 10% in the far northern part of the state, all the way to 46% in Imperial County in the southeast corner of the state. And it may not be totally obvious by looking at this map what the story is, but it turns out you can explain almost all of it by looking at the percentage of each county each region that is Latinx. And here's a scatter plot that shows that. I didn't put the best fit line in, but if you run the regression, it's actually the coefficient of determination, the R-squared value, is 0.87, which implies that it could, that Latinx population could explain 87% of the variance in intent to enroll in higher education. It's not anywhere close to that for any of the other racial groups. That's not obviously the only story going on here, but that is a big part of it. So you could, the more Latinx residents in your region, the higher the interest in pursuing higher education. I'll pause for a second and give you a chance to look at this, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Okay, Michael.
Hey, Michael, although whatever, in the Soviet Union, it would be Mikhail. So are these results representative?
Yes. So there, so that the survey itself is weighted, or sorry, the survey itself is applied to the population, but the results are weighted to be reflective of the population of California adults. Does that answer your question?
It does. So I guess, and I don't know if your slides get to it, but like, what are the implications of having 5 million adults who don't have a college education, or a degree rather?
I will get to that at the end.
Okay.
That's an excellent question, and yes, I will address. There are some implications.
And I want to flag for clarification that this is a survey. This includes folks with degrees. So some of these people may already have a degree and intend to still matriculate for, a graduate degree or something else. So it's not just uncredentialed Californians.
Yeah, and I should also add, this is also the 25 and up group. So it doesn't include 18 and 19 and so on year olds. That the College App organization does include them in the survey, but because as Sujin mentioned earlier, we focus on adults 25 and up as one of our policy focus areas. That's what this report is about. All right, Irina has her hand up.
Two questions. One, considering that California has such a large immigrant population, does the data allow you to break it down whether the individuals here, participants, are foreign-born or not? And second question, are you able to break down by actually the type of degree, as you just mentioned that this is a mixture, but I think the results might look very interesting if we could see if it's a 2-year degree, advanced degree, et cetera.
So on the first question, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't break it down by immigration status. And to the second question, sort of. In the next slide I will show you what types of institutions they're interested in. The survey doesn't ask about specific degrees and awards, but it does show who's interested in what type of college or university, and that gives you a clue as to what kind of program they're interested in pursuing. In fact, I will jump to that right now. This is maybe a little bit hard to read, so if it's hard, I invite you to look in the report. This is the same thing. For the most part, people are interested, the same groups of people who are interested in higher education in general are interested in these particular types of institutions, and specifically, and the way the buckets in which we break them down are public universities, which is in our state is California State University and University of California, vocational or technical colleges, which are private, for-profit and nonprofit colleges, usually at the sub-baccalaureate level, which is certificates and associate's degrees, and community colleges, which are for the most part public 2-year institutions. There are a few community colleges now that can offer bachelor's degrees in a few fields, but for the most part, it's certificates and associate's degrees. And you see, I'll point out a few exceptions, but for the most part, it follows the interest in general. A few interesting exceptions are that men are a little bit more interested than women in vocational or technical colleges, and that has some implications I'll get to in a few minutes. The older half of the age distribution, 45 and up, has almost no interest at all in attending public universities. And I suspect, we don't have evidence for this specifically, but we suspect that maybe at that age you're not interested in pursuing a 4-year degree or an advanced degree. You want something a little faster, that with a faster turnaround. That's our guess. And lower income Californians, those earning less than $35,000 a year household income, have very little interest in vocational or technical education, at least at one of those colleges. Although, as we'll point out later, they might be able to get a similar education at a community college. But before I go on, I see Irina raise your hand again.
I apologize if you've already defined this. What is your definition for intent to enroll?
So it's whether you have a score, and the score is created through the machine learning algorithm. So whether you have a score of 60% or higher for intent to enroll in higher education in the next 2 years.
Are you able to follow these individuals by any chance beyond this intent? No.
No. And that is a good point. I mean, first of all, if 60% is the threshold, that means maybe 40% would say, actually would not do that. And the other caveat is, even if you say you're going to do something, does it really, and lots of people say, oh, this year I'm going to work out more, and, eat less, and, be more healthy and stuff. Some people do it and other people don't. So you have to take it with a grain of salt that someone's good intentions may not actually follow through on it.
Well, beyond intentions, a lot of the research says that just saying that you wish or plan to go to college doesn't align with you actually going to college. So.
Right. So we will see, but what actually happens. But yes, this is just what someone says on the survey, and it's extrapolated to the population. But we're not following 19 million Californians for the next 2 years. All right, the last thing I want to show you, and then we'll talk about some implications and recommendations, is intent to enroll online, or I should say exclusively online. So this is this top number, 15%, is out of all Californians, not just the ones who said they were interested in attending post-secondary education, but all Californians. So 15% out of 19% is something like 80%. So now again, remember that this was during the first year of the pandemic, and maybe if you ask the same people again today, they might have a little less interest in online education and more interest in face-to-face in-person education. But there is a lot of interest in online education, and as Sujin mentioned before, we don't think it's going to go away just because the pandemic may end someday, or hopefully will end someday. We think that online is here to stay, and there's a lot of reasons, why it's why it can be beneficial, particularly to adults. Women are more likely than men to say they're interested in online education. That's similar to the overall interest in or intent to enroll in higher education. And again, Latinx Californians far more likely to be interested in enrolling online than the other groups, similar to their overall intent to enroll. Similar results when you look at ages. Again, the younger Californians among adults are the most likely, and also those with household incomes just below the median of $80,000, median household income of $80,000, have the highest level of interest and intent to enroll in higher education. Okay, I promised I would get the implications, and here they are. If you do a little arithmetic, and you imagine, let's just say half of that 5.1 million adults enroll, and let's just say 1/3 of them graduate, which is less than average, actually. In national average, it would be more like 38%, but we'll just say 33%. That would mean an additional 858,000 awards. And that's a lot. The credential gap in California is the number of degrees and certificates we think will be needed by the state's employment projections, minus what we actually predict to have given the status quo. And if we did get an extra 858,000 awards, it would cut that number almost in half. But it's not going to happen by itself. Just because Californians are interested in pursuing higher education doesn't mean they'll actually do it. And one of the reasons is that physical capacity at our state's institutions is limited. One example is that of the 23 CSU campuses, only 2 of them have physical space to accommodate more. Accommodate more students. So that brings us to our recommendations for employers, institutions, and state government. The first is that we recommend that employers and institutions develop compacts that are mutually beneficial and help students succeed, both in education and the workforce. For example, employers can offer their employees tuition reimbursement to help to support them going to college, and for prospective employees, they can offer them paid internships and other forms of work-based learning to give them a taste of what it is to work there and some practical knowledge. Employers can also give feedback to institutions and say, we need more graduates in this particular field or with these particular skills. That will help the institutions provide what students need. On the institution side, we think institutions can do better in tailoring their policies to welcome adult learners and help them succeed. So, for example, institutions can expand the use of credit for prior learning, so that students who have work experience, which is probably most of, if not all, 25 and up year olds, that they can get credit for relevant learning they've done outside the classroom. They can also offer shorter terms that are more, with more frequent start dates. If you were a student who was interested in enrolling at a lot of institutions in the state, and you walked in the door today, they would say, great, our application process starts in the fall, and if you get admitted in spring of 2023, you could start in the fall of 2023. A student might say, well, I don't want to start in 18 months. I want to start in 18 days. If institutions that offer more frequent start dates give you a chance to start more often, and are better for, we think, and the evidence suggests are better for adults. We think institutions can improve online instruction. We obviously didn't expect to switch over to online at the beginning of the pandemic, but now it's been a couple of years, and we think that they could both fix technology and also improve professional development for faculty to make online education more effective for more students. This would benefit the faculty, and it would help institutions serve a wider range of students, especially when we consider capacity constraints, the physical capacity. And we also think that institutions can do a better job with other aspects of online enrollment that aren't instruction. So libraries and labs and counseling and advising offices all shut down very quickly at the beginning of the pandemic, and have made some of them come back. But we think that it would behoove the institutions and the students if these could be reconceived to make them available online, or better and more readily available online. A few more recommendations are that institutions might better market their programs to meet demand. I showed you a few minutes ago how men are more interested than women in vocational technical programs. We had one of our reviewers of the early draft report said, we offer these same programs at community colleges, and it's usually cheaper and better. So if community colleges are offering vocational technical programs, that maybe they need to do a better job of selling that, so that students are able to know that that's a good option for them. We hope that the state will continue its efforts towards developing the cradle to career data system. Sujin's on the governing board, but as far as I know, she does not make appropriations or pass laws yet. Yeah, that's too bad, but that's the way it is. So we do need our state government to continue to support it legally, financially, and otherwise. We think that this is going to do a lot, not just for researchers like us, but for students to streamline lots of processes that are not so streamlined right now, like transfer of credit, signing up for additional services like financial aid and social services like food stamps and so on. These could all be automated and made a lot better if we had a system that integrated all these disparate systems into one umbrella system. We also, Sujin mentioned, think a higher education coordinating entity could help make sure that what students need, what they're asking for, or I should say prospective students are asking for in terms of education, are actually available in their area or by some other method. And some other method might be, if it's online, we need to expand broadband internet access. So we're doing pretty well overall. About 89% of households in California do have broadband internet, which this by definition includes cellular plans, but that's still 11% that don't. And among very low income households, those making less than 20,000, only 68% have broadband internet access right now. And that's just too low. It's not just for higher education, it's also for health and work and a whole bunch of other reasons. But if we're going to improve higher education and expand its reach, online will be part of it. And to make online work, you really need broadband internet access. I'll pause for a second. Any questions about this part? All right, David.
Hi, David. Thanks. One of your recommendations had to do with improving online instruction, and you said that would benefit faculty. Can you elaborate on your conclusion there a little bit?
Oh, it's not. I shouldn't say it's not. It won't benefit them in the sense that they're going to, make more money or get more, citations on their CVs, but it will benefit them in the sense that it will make them more effective in teaching. And they can, it's because it's just a different thing. Just like it's different for me to be presenting this presentation online than it would be if we were all sitting in Evans Hall. It's a different, teaching online is just a somewhat different experience. And so that the idea we hope is that, professional development and technology support could make it better. But it's mostly the main benefit actually will be to the student ultimately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Irina.
I wonder, David, if you're open to additional possible suggestions. One thing that comes to mind is how to make online programming, more acceptable. There's have been many discussions, at least at my university and a few other UCs that I'm aware of, that online programming is not acceptable, which is why there are current student walkouts, as you may be aware, in certain campuses. So the whole discussion, I think, about even making it acceptable to take certain courses, all courses online, needs to also become the norm rather than the exception. I wonder if that's something you're open to maybe adding to your recommendations. And a second thing I'm wondering about is, what about hiring additional faculty? It's a great suggestion to make online teaching more effective. I think that's definitely part of the puzzle. But the other piece of the puzzle is burden. A lot of our faculty are overburdened because of the effort that it takes to transfer things online and or to deal with hybrid teaching. And there's a lot of discussion with the low number of faculty who across the UC and CSU who are hired in a full-time position, whether it is lecturer or tenure track. And I think of the word burden because simply to suggest more training to make it more effective, that's important, but you're adding to the burden instead of alleviating it. So what do you think, David?
Thank you for those suggestions. When you say acceptable, the first one, do you mean acceptable to students, acceptable to faculty, acceptable to their later employees? Who is it that needs to be convinced in your estimation?
I think all of the above. All of the above. All players have to play a role in making it acceptable as a receiver, as a provider, and as an employer. All three count. Right now, if you have a paper degree, it matters a lot more than if you have an online university degree. That's part of our social acceptance of it.
All right, thank you for that suggestions. Melissa.
Hi, yeah, thank you. This is all great. And I just wanted to comment, given the conversation around faculty and burden. At WGU, what we've done is we've disaggregated the faculty model. So there are actually 4 distinct roles for faculty at WGU to make the online learning experience as good as it can be, as high quality for the students. So one, we have a course instructor that delivers the content and serves as the instructor, like a traditional instructor in the classroom. We also have program mentors who have a one-to-one relationship with students, and their sole purpose is to help them persist and complete. They serve as kind of like a counselor advisor role. We also have evaluation faculty. And we have curriculum design faculty. So in order to make the online instruction, again, to alleviate the burden on one person kind of doing all of those roles within the institution, we've separated those, and we have experts within those positions with terminal degrees, et cetera, for what it's worth.
No, thank you. All right, before we conclude, one more, we have a shameless plug. If anyone knows anyone looking for a part-time job, we have an opening for an administrative assistant. More details are on our website, or I'm happy to talk about it offline. Enough of that. If you would like to read this report, or you would like to subscribe to our newsletter and get notifications when publications and other products are released, please go to californiacompetes.org and sign up. And thank you so much. This is our contact information if you want to reach us later. I will take this down in a second. But again, californiacompetes.org is the website. I'll take it down so you can see each other's faces again if you're on a single screen. And so Jin and I are happy to answer any further questions.